Get it. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share Thinkorswim. Are you guys able to see my screen? So yeah, I'll take that as a yes. So here's what I'm looking at. The first thing I always start with, as you guys know, is I look at the day chart, and the day chart basically means that each candle represents a day, and we're looking at Peloton's chart over the course of a year. So this goes back to February 21 of 2020. And here's what I started seeing. I started seeing this really, really strong support, right? We see this trend line, but then I started seeing the highs getting lower and lower. So normally what happens in this type of situation is we generally expect the breakout up, right? But a lot of times, it's not a perfect science. They're indicators. They give us an opportunity to understand what's going on with the charts, but it's not always perfect. So Shravank made a great point that we reached a point where essentially, if I extend this to the right, this becomes our triangle, this shape right here. And it might be a little hard to see, so what I'll do is I'll make this price line. Let's edit the properties. Let's make it 2 times wide. Let's make the color white, and we'll do that. That should help it. So let me see if I can make this less in the way. We'll just do that. So if you guys see here, we've kind of got a bit of a triangle. So if we look at it from here, we actually do have a descending triangle, and Shravank makes a great point. So this is a great situation for us to play puts, because a descending triangle would be able to tell us that, okay, the stock is continuing down. But what we can do in this situation is let's go ahead and set a Fibonacci. So I'm going to go to the bottom here, choose my drawing tool, click the percent. That's going to give me my Fibonacci. So if we're expecting the stock to go up, we usually go from high to low. But because of this situation where we're actually expecting the stock to go down, I'm going to go from low to high, which is something we don't do normally because this is such a bullish market. So I'm going to go ahead. So my low is going to be at 95.86. Ooh, I should have worn glasses. And let's go all the way up to 171.09. So I'm going to right click, edit properties, Fibonacci. So this was supposed to be 95.86. So we're going to make it perfect, right? And let's go ahead and let's go to let's do the 1 hour chart. In fact, you know what, let's do the 4 hour chart, because the 4 hour chart is great for swings. I'm definitely curious about how this is going to pan out. So here's what we're looking at for Peloton's chart, right? Okay, let's start from here. So we see that Peloton, really had a fall from about this point. It went all the way up to our Fibonacci at 171.09, and then we see it fell. It tried to recover here. So I'm gonna pull out my oval, since you guys know this is how I indicate where my turbulence is. For those of you who are on the call for the first time, I use the term turbulence because it's kind of like a plane, right? It's a little shaky. It's not sure what it's doing. It's not going up. It's not going down, but it's shaky. And we call it turbulence because over here it struggles and then it comes right back down. So it bounces off of our 142 Fibonacci, and then it comes up. We see it go about halfway. So I'm actually going to draw a price line right over here, and I'm going to draw it right about, you know what, I like it here. I really do. And I think that's really fair. So what that tells us is that approximately whenever it reaches this range, this is another resistance if it's coming from below, or a support if it's coming from above. But we see it cross above, and this is a really important point to make. Actually, let me hide one of my EMAs. It's really, really strong. Just give me one sec. Make these one. That's two. Two is fine. Two is fine. Okay. So sorry, that was completely getting in the way. Do you see how Peloton stock completely skyrockets here, breaks through this resistance of ours, and then on the way back it completely breaks through it again? So the reason for this is because you have to think about stocks from a homeostasis standpoint, right? They always come back to where it's supposed to be, which is basically like the average. So if it skyrockets up, and there's no support, it's going to usually skyrocket back down. That's when we see it break all the way down, and then it finally finds support. And then right over here, it tests our high over here again. Obviously, they tried to push it above, right? The bulls definitely tried to take control of the situation, but the bears, you can see if we zoom in a little bit more, yeah. So you can see on this candle, the bears really took control. And the reason we know that is because even though the wick, which is the line the candle sits on, is so long, right? Right over here, the overall body is on the bottom half. And what that does for us is that tells us that there's a ton of volatility, which means that generally in this range, we can expect some type of reversal. Because what it means is somebody's got to win, right? So I think of stocks as stories. So I think of it like tug of war. So somebody's got to win. And because it's on the bottom half in that candle, the bears were winning, which means that it was coming back down. And that's when we see, Peloton absolutely falls. And this is where, if you see, I want to point out that line that Shravan pointed out. You see how that was a support that we were looking at that it broke through? Well, do you see how close that is to our Fibonacci? That's a very telling sign when our Fibonacci and our personal eyes kind of make that match. That tells us that our analysis is in the right track. So this is what we see. We see that overall, this is a descending triangle, and we see that it's trying to pass this Fibonacci, but it was unable to. We see it tried over here, right? Tried to go below, came right back. We see it tried over here, instantly came right back down. Then we see it on, what was this, Tuesday to Wednesday. We see it absolutely bounce above and then come back down. So that's really important to note. And at the same time, the high over here comes from our bearish trend line on the descending triangle. So all of these come together and kind of help us confirm the direction that Peloton's going for. And this right here, if we'd seen the volume, would have been a perfect indicator for us to say, okay, the stock is definitely coming down. We just see the volume absolutely skyrocket, or excuse me, fall, plummet, not skyrocket. So what's interesting now that I really want to point out is that before this trend line, let's zoom out. This trend line that was used for support here and here, that used to be a support, is now actually the resistance. So you see how it's unable to cross? Now what I'm curious to see is how this is going to behave tomorrow. So Peloton is one of those where we have to see for pre-market, because I'm really not sure how tomorrow's market day is going to continue. But at the same time, think about it like this. As the price continues to come up, we're assuming that the price will continue to come up. It's also got to fight this Fibonacci. And it's a lot easier to find a support than it is to break a resistance. So this is a really crucial point that we're entering right now. So if I were to draw some type of trend line.
Sorry to interrupt, Bertrand.
Go
Would
ahead.
you call that a bear flag,
Um,
or is it too early to make that assumption?
um, hmm. I see what you're looking at, definitely. Because we have the
Yeah,
here.
that area right where you're looking.
That's hard to say. It could be, right? Because we're looking at it from here, right? We're looking at it from like here, right? So it does look like it, but yeah, actually, I see what you're looking at. Again, we're gonna have to see how this moves in pre-market, and the reason I say that is because we're looking at the 4 hours, so we're getting a pretty high level look at how it's moving, right? If we go to, let's go to the 15-minute. Ah, jeez. Let's zoom out. I'm actually gonna remove this one. I'm gonna remove this one. It's getting too heavy. It's too many lines. And then we'll remove this one. So this is the movie we're looking at, right?
Yeah.
Right here. I don't know. When I go to the 15-minute, it looks less like one, but it obviously, we're looking at trends on different levels. So it's possible that on the 4 hour, this is a bear flag. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna say. Here's what we have to see for tomorrow, because these lines are really intersecting over here. I mean, this to me tells me that we're in a really crucial point to where if this does fail tomorrow, if it were to fail tomorrow, it could be very drastic. So one, we need to see how it moves in pre-market. But two, if it opens anywhere near 133, I'd be pretty concerned, because I have a feeling that what it's going to do is if we're over here, It's going to try, bounce, try, bounce, try, and then finally break through. And that is a huge like $9 move down. And then puts, I mean, that's over like 100 to 200% easy. And that's an easy play right there. So, okay. Here's what I'm going to say. I want to announce Peloton tomorrow for pre-market, but let's set our basic understanding, assuming that there's no bear flag. Based off our Fibonacci, here's what we need from Peloton. For Peloton, we need it to go above 142.50, right? Because that's our Fibonacci. Above 142.50, I would say directly to 153, but in the middle, I'm expecting some. Let's switch to our price line because now we're looking at different levels. We see a ton of turbulence around this price, right? Is there anybody waiting? Let me just make sure. All right, great. And we see it really struggle on this price, and then it tanks. So that tells me that the moment it kind of broke through this range, it definitely struggled. So where I drew this line was 146.33. I would honestly say 145 is more critical from what I'm seeing over here. So I'd say from 142.50 to 145. Above 145, because this was such a smooth drop, I'm assuming we can expect a smooth growth up all the way to 153. But I would say that's a big number. So I feel like to play it safe, because we see a little bit of a hook here, 150 seems like a really solid point for us to get out. And that would still be an $8 move, which has a lot of potential. But that's for calls, right? If we were to go down, we would need for it to break below first 135. Below 135, I just look, right? But because we want to play it safe and we want to lose very little, I would say entry is at 133.20. Because it can move. I'd say below 133 just to play it safe. And below 133. So what we're going to do in this situation, because we don't have immediate history of when it was in this range. So we're looking between 133 and 124, right? So we're going to go back in the history, and here's what we see. We saw that there was a little bit of a nook right around 129.50. So I'm going to draw a price line here because we see that it struggled, but when it did break through, it went really strongly, and then it had a smooth increase in price. So I'm going to believe that based off previous movement on this stock, that we can expect something very similar at this point. So below 133, I'm going to look for it to drop to about, I'm going to say 130, really. So from 133, it can go to 130. Below 130, I believe it could have a strong decrease down to 125. And again, that gives us an $8 move. So based on this Fibonacci, we've identified where our targets are going to be, where we can enter with contracts. Even with shares, I mean, an $8 move is not tiny. If you did want to play it very safe, you could buy shares. But again, we're looking more from a contract perspective. I would buy calls above 142.50. That could run to about 150, and then above 150, we can see it go to 153. So we see similar patterns on both, going up and going down. Are there any questions about what I found? And Shravank, if you disagree with that, feel free to call me out. I'd love your input.
No, I like where you're going with it.
Okay, for sure. Are there any questions about how I found that? If it didn't make sense, totally mention it now so we can help you out. Because that's the main thing. We want to make sure we help you guys really learn. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and continue to our list. So we're gonna start with Apple, and my thinkorswim is having a stroke, which is what I love to see. So here we are with Apple. This is how Apple's been moving. So it broke through our Fibonacci, right? And it just absolutely tanked below our trend line. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If it does fall below a trend line, I mean, look at how absurd this volume was, right? Insane. So we see it tried to recover itself on our 0% trend line, but then it absolutely tanked in pre-market. And then, this is where we see it kind of find its position, tried to recover on the 0%, and then it came right back down. So to me, it seems like since we've exited this range, we can get rid of this Fibonacci. We're gonna get rid of this, and we can always reposition it and do what we need to do. But it seems for right now, this is the right thing to do. And I'm gonna keep my trend lines and my price lines because those are always helpful. It's always helpful. Okay, so I'm gonna draw a Fibonacci, and because we want it to go down again, right? This is a downwards trend. I'm gonna start from a low of 127.41. And I'm going to take it all the way up to a high over here. What's the high here? 136.1. There's a better high here. 136.15. I'm going to zoom in, man. I'm just going to put it here. Let's zoom in. This is the high at 136.35. Okay. Let's see. Let's admit. So we're going to edit. What did I say? 35? Just to confirm. Okay, great. So now let's go back to where we are right now. And let's look at how our Fibonacci correlates with this. And actually, this is moving really nicely. This is following Fibonacci really well. And this is a good sign because it tells us that if it's following it here, we can expect it to follow later as well. So let me get my oval, right? You see this huge support right over here. And it takes a lot of time for it to break through. But when it does break through, we see it fall through our 50, our 61, and it finds a bit of a support at our 78. And then it tries to recover. We see a huge resistance, and then it finally tanks and tanks and tanks. So this is actually a really nice move, because what we're seeing is if I were to pull a mini trend line on here, right, we're seeing bottom to bottom to bottom to bottom like that. And obviously there's a little bit of a drastic move here, which is okay, it happens, right? But then we see it, if we kind of see it, it's like a little bearish wedge here. And it finally breaks through. When it does break through, we see it try and struggle. It goes all the way to the next Fibonacci, comes back down, and then we see a little bit of resistance here. So I'm going to draw an oval here. So this is good. And you guys may wonder why I tell it like a story, but for me, I try to visualize the stock instead of looking at numbers and like that. I try to give it more of a persona, try to treat it like it's a story, like I'm reading a book. And the reason for that is because when you start reading it like a book, you start to think about where the book's going to go, right? We have a creative side where we wonder what's going to happen at the end. We want those creative juices to flow. My method is obviously a little crazy. I'm crazy. So that's what works for me. But being able to visualize it really can help you kind of build those thought processes of where is this supposed to go. So what we see with Apple on Friday, right? They tried to raise the price. It failed on the fib. And then it was really turbulent on our 129 price line. And then it went sideways. So here's what we need to see for tomorrow. If we were to buy calls for Apple, let's do Apple. We'd look for calls above 131. And above 131, we can expect it to go to what, here and here. I'm expecting 133 because that was the extent of the move. But we are going to face some resistances. That's not a word. Some resistance on key points of 131.88, which is about 132. And then we go to 133. So we are looking for a middle point here, which could cost as a resistance. So this is the move we're looking for. But I'm going to set this point in the middle and basically say 131.75. So I'm going to say you really have to watch volume here. So I'm going to put a careful mark here. And just as a reminder, I'll be posting these in the watch list so you have all those. And we are recording this call for everybody. And below 129, I buy puts. So from 129, we can expect it to fall to 127. 127.50, which is about a $2 move, which is pretty strong on Apple. If it falls below 127, I would hold on to puts. We could go all the way to 122, but again, since we have nothing in current realm of Apple's price, we're gonna go back a bit and see what we can find in this range. They haven't been in this price range in a while. Okay, here we go. The last time it was in this price range was December 21st. And what we saw was that, so let's say it fell from here. What we can expect is a price line, and I'm going to be pretty strict with these, right? We'd have one here, that one here, just because I don't want to come back to this in the chart so that we can look at where it's supposed to go. So we come back to our current price. So because we have this line over here, perhaps we should adjust our below 127.50. Okay. If it were to fall below 127.50, so I'd say look around, say 125 first, because what I'm looking at is if it's able to break below this first Fibonacci, we're looking at a pretty drastic move. And in fact, I will go back, because what we saw here was that when it did break, right, it struggled, but then when it fell to about 124, and that was the extent of the move because it was so drastic. I'm expecting it to follow the same pattern here, but I feel like if we were to play it safe, 125 would be a good marker. So I would probably play it safe, especially because, you know, we're in a situation where we're trying to guide people. I'd say 125 would be the next target, and then below that 122. So the reason we're looking at so much more for puts versus calls is because Apple in general is in a bearish trend, right? They're not looking at the most positive upwards movement. So we really want to be able to calculate that and be able to say, okay, you know, all things considered, how is Apple moving? How are they going? If we were to draw a straight line, I mean, it wouldn't be great. You can tell overall they're pretty bearish. If Apple were to recover, the most I really see them going to by tomorrow should be like 133, but that's a $4 move in pre-market. 133 is actually where our target is for calls, so that's actually a perfect exit level. I mean, that tells me everything I need, because if it goes above here, I mean, we probably would expect some type of bearish movement on that, because this is a huge resistance, right? It's a bearish line. So 133, that just confirms my exit point for our play. If it does continue upwards, 133 is where we want to get out. If it does continue downwards, we know exactly where it should go. We factored in volatility, we factored in playing it safe, and we also are using Fibonacci. Are there any questions about the methods we're using or how I've come up with these numbers? All right. So let's go ahead and move forward to AMD. AMD has not been moving great, I will say. If I were to draw a line from here, this is still good, right? It signifies over the past 2 to 3 weeks, you know, we're going from, yeah, I'd say about for the past 3 weeks, we've seen pretty much a bullish move, which is really strong, and that's a really good thing. However, we've seen the past week, they've been bearish. So we really want to see if it's going to be able to break through this, if it's going to be able to continue the trend. So here's the deal for tomorrow, right? If we expected this to continue upwards, we would need it to open above 88.50. So that's what I'm going to say for AMD. And the reason I say that is because, one, we have a price line here, right? So this is a bit of a support. If it were to open below this, that tells me we're headed downwards anyways. But at the same time, we have our upwards, bullish trend, which is it. You know, if it were to open below this, it would have to open in this range. So either way, if it opens below here, there's not much of a drop to our bullish trend line. And with the way momentum works, I'm sure we'd see it fall below. So if it were to open AMD, so bearish if below 88.50. Is anybody confused about why I'm saying that? Okay, great. And if it opens above this range, essentially, I'm expecting it to move upwards. We have to see it above that point for sure. Below that, we can look for puts. I would still probably play it safe and enter. I would probably enter based on Fibonacci. So I'd say puts, enter at 87. And then if we look at previous movement, we see a bit of a support at 85.30. Then we see some down at 84.69. So I feel like 85 is probably a really solid target for that, just because we get into this really messy zone. If it were to fall below 85, we can see it go down to 84.50, which is a pretty small margin between the two, but that's more of like a squeeze, right? We're squeezing as much as we can. Below that, we can expect it to go to 83, and below that, 82. Now, if we were to expect it to go for calls, we would want it to go above, 90.50. And from 90.50, we're looking at, and this is where it gets really shaky, actually. 92.50. So that's about a $2 move above 92.50. I mean, it's found. This is a very turbulent zone. I'd be very careful playing calls, because this, first of all, I mean, there's so many resistance points on the way up. I don't know. I'm actually pretty bearish on it looking at this chart, but I could be wrong. But that's why we play both sides. But yeah, so above 92.50, we could see it go all the way to 95, but we would need strong volume here. So I'm going to make a note of that in our watch list. Any questions about AMD? I want to watch this one in the morning. All right, let's go to the next one. We're going to look at BABA. And as always, if you guys want to check a specific ticker, shoot a message in our chat and we'll do our best to look at it. So BABA, we are expecting BABA. It's sitting right on our Fibonacci, so it really depends on how it's going to go in the morning. But let's go ahead and say calls. We'd look for above 265.50, and that can run all the way to, well, there's a price line here, but the last time it broke through, let's see. So the last time it broke through from a level here. So it broke through, all right. What I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to find a level where, right, if it were to break through here, I'm trying to see previously if it was able to break through with a lot of volume, or if we found this price target to be of issue. But what I'm seeing is every time it's pretty much broken through volatility wise all the time. The only time it struggled was when it came all the way here, but the move started here, so the momentum definitely died out here. I don't think this resistance would be an issue, truthfully. If there's enough volume for BABA, I do think we could go to about 268, which is about a $2.50 move. And above that, if we have enough volume, we could go to 271.50. So BABA seems to have this $2.50 pattern, which is really important to note. If we were to play puts, we would look for it to, I'm going to pretend that it falls, assuming that it is able to. So we'll start with 263, right? Below 263, it could go to 261.50, which is a $1.50 move. Below that, we could honestly see it go all the way to 256. And the reason I say that is because the last time it made a move as drastic as that, right? We see this, we're entering this range where it absolutely tanked, right? That was the last drastic gap. So ideally, if we look on a long term, this could be a gap. This gap was filled, right? And then we saw a little bit of volatility from there. But every time it enters this range, it's extremely volatile, right? Last time it was here, always. You see here, huge spikes, huge drops, huge movements. So this range is super volatile when it comes to BABA. That could be a very, very good breadwinner for us. So I would say 256 is a very reasonable target for that one, truthfully. Are there any questions about how I found that? All right, let's move to Boeing. Now, I am looking for puts because of what happened with the United Airlines flight this weekend. So if you guys don't know, there was a flight. One of their jet engines caught on fire. Parts of it flew off, landed in people's driveways. and people weren't happy about it as expected. So whenever something like this happens, Boeing is just dealing with a lot. Um, you know, Poor thing. Almost, I almost feel bad for him. So what we're seeing here is coincidentally we're at the top of our resistance point. Now it's failed once, technically twice, three times. I would just count this as one move. So it has failed three times, and normally I would say the fourth time is a good sign of it breaking out. We see that the momentum starts to die out. If we zoom in and we expand this a little bit, we see that our EMAs are getting closer, which could signal a trend reversal. So I am looking at puts not only because of fundamentals, but because of technicals. So I do feel pretty confident in that strategy. So here's what I'd say. I'm only going to set up alerts for, well, I guess I can give calls in the weird circumstance it runs. So calls, if it goes above 218, to play it safe, because we see here it had a little spike. I could see this totally being another. So I'm going to say above 219, 219. Above 219, it could run to 223.50. But puts, this is where I'm really looking forward to it. Um, I would expect below 214. I'm going to say, actually, that's more like 213 right over here. So below 213, we can expect it to fall down to, we have a support at 208. That's where the last move meant. But I'm going to use this Fibonacci point at 211. Below 211, I'm going to set a price line. Below 211, it can run to about 208. And below 208, I don't know where this price line's from. But at that point, if it's fallen below, it can go all the way to 203, in my opinion. Because if it's going to fall, it's going to fall hard. And below 203, just because it's Boeing, and they're always dealing with some shit, I would expect it to hover around, maximum it could drop, in my opinion, is like 195, really. And that's really assuming just the worst for Boeing. But yeah, those are some really solid points when we think about where this could go. Are there any questions about that? All right, the next one I want to talk about is Clove. I know we've purchased some for our long term. Arion, do you want to chime in here? I think you had some comments.
Yeah, so I was actually doing research on Clove today because I do have 250 shares of them. So as everybody probably knows, and if you don't right now, they're under investigation. There's a lawsuit against them. The Department of Justice is looking into them, and there's a bunch of negative news. However, a couple of nights ago, the CEO tweeted a statement out on Twitter. It's now deleted because he deleted it after the criticism. But I personally saw it as a bullish sign, but the CEO basically went on a rampage and he's like, all this effing media talking about this effing stuff about my company. Like, we are the best company. We have the best structure. We would die for our clients, blah, 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 this, and this. And the media took it as like the CEO's gone crazy. Like, he's on a swearing rampage. However, I saw it as bullish because he's there to defend his company. He said they would climb a hill and die for their clients. Like, that's a big statement to make. So I saw that as a bullish sign for the future. And as I was digging into it, the lawsuits and the investigation, it's basically just because of all the hype around the stock right now. So they're looking into it. But I think it's going to come back inconclusive. And I think that the CEO is right that it's all BS.
Sweet. That's been a really interesting point to make nowadays, because what happens is, and I saw this happen with a stock I bought last year called the Novio. Oh, horrible experience. But what happened was that a company came out after a huge bull run. They opened a short position. I think it was Citadel Research or something, and they basically said, you know what, this company's a fraud. Their vaccine doesn't work. They're absolute trash. They've been lying to everyone. So a company will come out, they'll short it, release this news. Stock will absolutely tank. They'll take their profits. It's market manipulation, but for some reason they never get caught. Stupid SEC. And basically at that point, stock tanks, and then what ends up happening is the stock either never recovers, if it is genuinely a bad stock, or if it's a really good stock, that's a great opportunity for people who really know the value to get in and just hold. And what ends up happening is the stock absolutely skyrockets. Now, Blink was one of those stocks, right? I think it was by Hindenburg. They commented on Blink and they said, you know what? Let me see if I can pull up Blink just real quick. Let's go to the day chart, right? So I think it was on this bull run over here. Let me just admit. Let me just admit someone. Yeah, so you see this huge run in Blink, right? And they just I think it was around $8, which is where it fell. But I don't remember where in the chart it was, but it absolutely tanked, and then Blink ended up flying up, and now it's at $64. So I think it was around $8. This is I can't tell you when it was truly, but I remember Blink was one of them. So this is very, very common. If we look at Clove, it has been on a very nasty bullish trend. But what we're seeing is, let's see if I can draw a trend. I mean, it's not pretty, I'll tell you that right now. It's really not pretty. But I am still bullish on it. I believe in their stock. I believe there's a lot of potential. So it's going from there. Now it's kind of found a base over here. So what we need is for this to be some form of ascending triangle where it finds this support as a trend and it continues moving upwards, and we can find it start to recover. So I think we may be at a bottom, right? Because we announced Clove at about 11.79, so we're down about $1, which isn't a big deal in my opinion. 15 cents is $1 or 1.5%, then 5 times that, right? Or maybe 6 or 7. So it's not a big deal. I mean, we usually look at about 15 to 20% as being a stop loss, and the reason is that gives us a margin for error. Not every trade you have is going to be a perfect entry, but if you really do believe in it, there's going to be a lot of potential for you. So if we move into, let's say, the 15-minute chart, right? That trend that we set, that trend line, is exactly where it's bouncing off. So it's starting to cook. I'm sure it's going to start bouncing back. But we needed to cross 1130. Above 1130, we needed to go above 1180, which is exactly where we bought. And then we needed to go above 1218. Then we can see it try to fight this trend line. Let me see if I can extend the time frame to 90 days. So it needs to go above here, needs to go above this price point, then it needs to go above here, and it'll continue making its way back up. What you'll see is that Clove really tends to make price, what was this? Was this the drop? It went from 14 down to 11.89. I think this is where we bought, and then this is where we saw it spike up and then continue forward. So yeah, this is the day we bought it. Bought it at a low, and then we really hopped on. So I still see a very bullish trend. Not a trend, excuse me. I have very bullish sentiments for Clove. I think they're a very strong company, but investors are confused because we've got this company saying they're frauds, and there are DOJ announcements, or they're definitely looking into it, because when you're dealing with Medicare, Medicaid, and this is coming from somebody who's worked in the healthcare department, I know how this works. I know how billing works, and I know how they're supposed to do all this. I'm telling you, the DOJ and all these medical companies do annual reports with every single company, no matter how squeaky clean they are, because they're supposed to. You're dealing with governmental money for healthcare. They're gonna check you twice. They will. So don't let that discourage you. Don't let these lawsuits, make you feel like Clove is a shit company. They want you to feel like that. When everybody's selling and everybody's scared, that's when you hop in. That's the strategy of making money. You buy when others are fearful and you sell when others are greedy. That's exactly how you make the most out of your money. The question and the practice of it comes from experience. So the more you start trading, the more you build of your basics, the better you get at understanding those entries. And we shared that entry with you. Doesn't matter if it dropped another dollar from where I entered it. It really doesn't, because I'm holding this until it goes to about $15 to $20. There's a lot more for this to go. Again, this isn't my long-term account. I'm patient. So, but those are my perspectives. Are there any questions about Clove before we move forward? All right, let's see what the next one we're going to be playing is. Let's look at this list. We can take a look at Facebook. So far, are there any tickers that anybody wanted to mention? Is there anything you guys want to take a look at? I think FRX was one. We'll take a look at that after this one. Wow, Facebook has not been having the best last 2 days. Thursday and Friday were a huge drop, which isn't great. But good news is we saw it bounce um, off of our support that we drew before. Just another example of why it's so important to draw these, because they will really help you. If we see Facebook bounce above 262, I believe that this gap can be filled. We can see it go to at least 267 without hesitation. So let's go ahead and note this down. Let's say Facebook. We're going to look for calls above 263 to be fair, to be safe, excuse me. You know, we definitely want a little bit of wiggle room to see if there's enough movement. And we want volume here. And if we have enough volume and 263 is a good entry, I genuinely believe we can run to about 267, which is a really nice, strong move. And above 267, we could see it go all the way to 270.50, which is total about a $6 move. And if you have a $300 let's see, I just want to give examples. If we've got an option chain and we're looking at 19 March, a contract that costs you what, $800 and has a 47 delta, you have 47 plus 49. So if you compound that up, 47 times what, 6, that's $240. So that's an easy 25 to 30% move. But at the same time, I want you to think about how much more exponential these get. That's got to be 100% in my book. I really do think so. It really can, especially with IV. So at least, well, maybe not 100, like 60 to 70%. So this move could be a really strong one. Definitely make sure you look at the numbers and calculate before you do your entries. So that's going to be for calls. If we see it fall below, historically, whenever it's broken through, it's fallen pretty drastically. So I think we could see it fall to about 256. So below 260, we can see this drop all the way to about 256. Below 256, I'm going to say 255. Are there any questions about Facebook? All right, fantastic. Next, we're going to go to Fubo. And we saw a bit of a descending triangle on Fubo. So I'm curious because it's tried to break, and it's finding support here, which I think is nuts. But it is doing what it's supposed to do. But it's also, if you see, it's using this this Fibonacci at 43.25 as a resistance. So that's also good news. I'm not sure how it's going to go tomorrow. Again, these are right on the cusp, and we really have to see how pre-market's going to go. But I genuinely believe if we were to enter Fubo, we would want for it to go below, I want to say 42, but to play it safe, we can go 41.50. Below 41.50. Let's see how it's acted previously in this price range. So when it did fall below, it went to about 41. So I'm going to set a price line here. Now, I'll be honest, it's okay to look at a chart and say you don't like it. You know what? I'll say this. Is there anybody who wants me to look at Fubo? Because I'm not liking the charts, but I will do analysis if somebody's curious about it. Is there anybody who wants me to take a look at it? Okay, great. Let's go to the one I actually want to see. We're looking at shares of FRX. Let me just confirm, because there was a member who wanted to take a look at these. I want to make sure we're looking at the right one. FRX, yep. Okay, so we're going to go to the day chart. Wow, this is insane. I normally hate these charts. I'm going to be very honest with you. Any movement like this is trash in my eyes. Let's see, chat. Okay, FRX. Oh, sweet. Somebody did mention that. Palantir, we're going to take a look at that. TSNP, we can take a look at those. If you guys give any tickers like these pumps, I probably won't look at it. I really recommend you guys stay away from stocks like these. I mean, this is just insane movement. I'm not a fan at all. Because this literally went about $2 unnecessarily. Let's go to the 4-hour. Yeah. I don't like this at all. I would stay away from FRX. Because here's the thing, right? They started taking off here. This is where we saw their price really take off. Tons of volume. But do you see how the candle is at the bottom, or the body is at the bottom of the wick? That tells you that they tried to skyrocket the shit out of this price, but they weren't able to maintain that. They really weren't. And that's a really telling sign, because what that means is that there's not enough interest at this price to create some type of base. So I really think even over here it struggled. It could fall all the way to $11 or $12 from where it is. That's a $2 move, and on a $14 stock, that's pretty massive. That's about a 15% drop almost. So be very careful with this. I don't even want to analyze this too much because I'm really against this one. I really am. So I mean, if there's no basis, there's no point. So that's that one. After Facebook, let's see what else we have. Neo. Let's take a look at Neo. LMNOP. Here's what we're looking at. Real messy. Let's go to the 15-minute. Actually, no, let's go to the hour. Hour is going to give us a better look. So, let's get the oval. Here's what we see. Struggling here. Turbulence on this price point. Tried over here. So, it actually failed on our 21 EMA. That's where the price stopped. Tried over here. Couldn't succeed. Tried over here. Couldn't succeed in after hours. So, it seems like this is a really critical point for Neo. We need it to cross 56 for us to even look at it, truthfully. But I would genuinely wait. Well, this goes to 56.50. Above 56.50, it could go to 57, but that's a really small margin. I'm going to say play it safe with Neo. Look for calls above 57.50. Right? That's where we have this price line. Above that, we can see it run to about 59.25. That's about just shy of $2, $1.75 move, and 59.37. This could probably run all the way to 62 if we were able to do that. So that's what I would look for with Neo. But if we were to play calls, I would look at, puts, I would look at 53.25, 53 actually, with the way Neo moves. Below 53, and I think that could run to 50.50. And below that, if you really wanted to, it could go to 48.50. Any questions about that? Okay, great. Let's take a look at Palantir. So we called this one out in our Discord chat. I entered at 25.25, so I was very happy to see it there. I think I'm up like 1,000 on that one, so which is pretty sweet. That was nice for a day. So let's see. We're currently, technically, we're doing pretty well. Let's take a look at the 1-minute chart, and what we're looking for is, yep, we have a really strong. We got 1, 2, 3 candles above. So if you guys have seen that strategy that Umer's mentioned, the 3 candle breakout, where 3 bodies of green candles are above the Fibonacci line, then that tells us that there's a support. So I am bullish. I'm very, very bullish on Palantir. Let's go back to, we'll do the 30-minute. I like the 30-minute actually. A little bit of a better look. So I think we could even see Palantir, with the way it fell, we could see this gap filled, truly. We could see a little bit of resistance here at 31. Yeah, 31.50 or so. So let's set a price line right over here, right? So this could run all the way. So Palantir, let's get this down. Palantir above 31. If you really wanted to buy contracts, 31.25, this could run to 33.50. And from what I can see, 33.50, if it were to cross, it would probably fail at 34.50. And then if it were to really find its movement, it could go to 36.50. Well, to be fair, I'd probably say 36, because that's a little safer. As for puts, which God bless, I hope it don't, we'd want it to be below 29, and that could go to 28. 28 could fall to 27. So it's really moving in dollar movements for Palantir, which is a good thing. We want that because we want it to be really slow as it falls and really strong as it rises, because we are bullish on it. So that's a good thing for us. Any questions about Palantir? All right, we're going to take a look at Naked. I feel like we've covered this one quite a bit. I don't know. Ariane, do you have any comments on Naked?
No, I think it was a pump and dump. I called it out, but the thing is, I got out after like a 10% gain.
I mean, this is following the trend perfectly. It's really bearish. I don't know if I'd be I could even see this. I mean, I don't know. It looks like it's coming down. This almost looks like a bear flag, and I could probably see it break through this 1.1 if there's no news. So I'd probably stay away from this if you haven't entered. Be very careful with this one. Let's take a look at TSNP. Heard this one thrown around a lot. I don't think I've done any analysis on this. Let's go to the day. Wow. Another pump. Love to see it. If there's anything I love as a stock trader, it's not having stability. So we've got that. It did bounce off, which is really good news. So let's go to the 1 hour. Huge jump. So let's set a Fibonacci here. We're going to go from 193 and we're going to go down to 0.3. Jesus, that's low. But here's what we see. On the way down, we saw it use this Fibonacci line as a support, fell, tried, failed, support, failed, finally came back up, and now this is a resistance. So for TSNP, I'm not going to be posting this in our watch list, just because this isn't a normal play we do. But Ariane, if you want to write this down and post it in the penny stocks, that'd be helpful. So
yeah, actually, I just posted an article about TSNP and penny stocks. So all the people trying to short sell it and bring the price down, Seeking Alpha was one of them. Seeking
really,
Alpha came out with an article a day or two ago, and they were like, "Sorry, everyone, we were wrong. Like, we doubted them, and we were wrong." So it feels good to be validated.
humility, nice to see it. Yeah, so we need TSNP to go above 112. Above 112, we could see it. I think it would skip this move because it's both times it's just flown through this Fibonacci. I think above 112, we could see it go, I want to say 135 or 140 or so. 140 seems like a really, really fair trajectory for it. Above 140, we'll see it around 160. 160, we'd see it back to 190. Then from there, we see where it goes from there. I'd be very surprised if it made it here within the next 5 days, but we do see this trend line coming. So as it starts to rise, if it does continue sideways, we're going to start seeing pressure build up because it's getting really close and it needs to choose a direction. Either it's going to find its way up or find its way down. But yeah, that's what I see for TSNP. Somebody said Drone Delivery Canada Corp. I think we took a look at this one last time. They've been traveling pretty sideways. If I pick up my trend line, I bring this down. can say it moves like that. And then I would say there's pretty much a support at this level. So it does look like it's a descending triangle. This may actually come down tomorrow. It does depend. I mean, if it's 150, I'm going to say 153 is a really critical price. Depending on where it is above or below, that's going to tell you the direction, in my opinion. So definitely pay attention to that. SOS, yeah, we can take a look. SOS is currently sitting on the support of 11.2. For it to continue up, we would need it to break through 1365. But actually, first we needed to break through 1250. So I'm set. Hello? Alrighty. ठीक है सिंगो ध्यान ना. So do we have a price point at 1250? It needs to break above this for us to be able to continue above to 1365. Above 1365, that's when we can see it really skyrocket up to 1676. And the only reason I say that is because there is no resistance in this range. On the way up and on the way down, it's almost like a perfect tower. So that's a really good sign if you're hoping for it to continue up. You got to be careful in that situation though. And in fact, I kind of see, just from a previous trend standpoint, right? I see this flag and it breaks below. So just kind of like what Shravank was mentioning earlier in our call. So definitely pay attention to this. But I think with that, the last one I'll do is Mara. You can take a look at Mara. Mara is sitting on the support for. We should probably redraw this Fibonacci because it has broken through. So I'm going to remove that and I'm going to set a new Fibonacci based off of this high of 50.45 and bring it down to this low of 21.19. So 21.19. Okay, here's what we see. So it's technically on this, it's failing the Fibonacci. So it tried to cross and it wasn't able to. So what we need Mara to do is we need to see Mara above. This is a $6 move. I think Mara above 46.50. We can see it run to about 50, right? And I'm assuming if we were to buy contracts for puts, I would want to see this go below 39. And below 39, I would like to see it fall to 36. That's what I'm looking at for Mara. Are there any questions about that? All right. We should be all set. I'm just going to check this one. Somebody mentioned Upwork. This will definitely be the last one. I know I said that, but let's see. Go from here. So we have a really nice bullish move. Love to see it. But we also see from here to here, found a new, more aggressive support. So if it breaks below, we know we have this range for it to fall. I'm actually going to set this. So what this does for us is now we have different ranges. So if it fails this trend line, it'll follow this one. If it fails this one, it can follow this one. Below this one, we're fucked. Jokes aside, let me draw the Fibonacci on this. 50 or 60.44. We can bring this down to a low of 33.11. All right, so let's go ahead and go to our 1 hour. Let's zoom out. All right, here's what we're seeing with Upwork. They need to find a move above, based on this turbulence, I would say a price line right over here would be really fitting. It's about 57.50. That's perfect. 57.50. So for Upwork, I would look for calls above 57.50, and I would expect that to go to, I mean, it could fill here at 58.50, but I would like for that to go to 60. It's a $2.50 move. And then for puts, I would look below 54.25, and below 54.25 we could see it fall to about 52.50.